Absolutely stupendous. Everyone, thank you so much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it, especially being on here with the Cyber Judo team. And Travis, really appreciate all the hard work that you've put in last week with Network Pen Testing 101 Part 1 series and doing a lot of work and coverage on like Wireshark and the initial fundamentals of reconnaissance and scoping out an environment as we're trying to find various vulnerabilities and weaknesses and then leverage those and exploit those to gain a foothold into an environment. So tonight, still covering the network pen testing. We're going to be cracking at this Active Directory environment that we have here. I believe we got a Windows Server 2016 environment, so there'll be some interesting goodies and some fantastic tools you're going to be going through in just a couple of moments. I think you said you're going to be doing a little bit with like IPv6 and Impacket. We're going to continue further into that. So part 2, network pen testing, we're going to cover tonight. We'll see how far we can get. And as things roll on, there might be a part 3 and so on and so forth. So that being said, Travis, I am going to man the chats and we'll have you run with it here. Cameron, how's everyone doing tonight? Doing pretty good, staying busy, but otherwise hanging in there, pretty fantastic start to the year so far. So that being said, Travis, I'm going to hand it right over to you.
Okay, yeah, like Christian said, we've got a lot of ground to cover tonight, a lot of different topics to go through. I don't mind at all if it turns into a part 3 in the future, so please feel free to ask questions. I have like 25 windows open right now. I don't know where the chat is, so if you need to unmute and ask a question, it's not going to bother me one bit. If you interrupt, that's absolutely fine with me, but I'll try to stop once in a while and just poll for any questions from the chat box as well. So just to do a little bit of a recap from last week, if you weren't able to make it, or just to remind everybody what we had done, we first got into this lab environment. We opened up Wireshark, got an idea of the lay of the land, got an idea of what traffic's going back and forth. We saw it was a dual stack environment, so IPv4 and IPv6 together. We didn't at the time see any NetBIOS, we didn't see any LMNOR, but we did talk about how you can use responder and analyze mode versus keeping Wireshark on indefinitely to keep analyzing for that over time. And what we'll see here in a little while is that NetBIOS and LMNOR actually absolutely is present on the network. It's just being that right now it's a static lab. We don't have a lot of different scheduled jobs making artificial noise back and forth. I'm going to have to initiate one of those requests for us to see it. I see that. Thank you. Great. That's awesome, Kylie. Appreciate that right at the beginning. Log me out. Okay. We'll see that just because it illustrates that just because you don't see it on the first go, it's still good to do those things in analyze mode. Make sure you don't miss anything, because we're going to see there's a lot of opportunities that come from that. But that's not the only option that we've got. Other things that we do is we ran a few of the initial scans to start collecting information. We use things like NetDiscover to passively look at ARP traffic and figure out what kind of subnet we were on, what other devices were around. So there were a ton of different IoT things from WISE, some Ubiquiti networking equipment, a couple of Windows servers, which is what we're gonna be focusing on tonight, Windows Workstation, that sort of thing. We then pushed that forward into a little bit more active means. We started using Nmap, grabbing all those ports and information, imported that into Legion, and then we went through some initial scanning with OpenVAS and corroborated a finding that looked like there was some older SMB vulnerabilities on a Windows 2016 server. But what we'll do first here, getting into some more of the new content, is we'll talk about the 2 ways that we can go about doing man-in-the-middle attacks right off the bat here. Now, the one I'll show you the first here, we'll set it up first. We're going to use man-in-the-middle 6. That's the tool, and it's going to basically be exploiting a default configuration to take over a DNS server. And in doing that, we're essentially going to be able to trick the target machines into querying us instead of the real DNS server, and being a man in the middle in that regard. Now, there are definitely some concerns with doing that, and I'm going to point you guys to a blog here once I get it set up from the people who made it, which goes into a great depth about this type of an attack. It's not a particularly safe one to do. And by that I mean you can cause a lot of disruption on the network. You can give a lot of people a really bad day by messing with DNS, even if you're trying to do it, carefully and you set the time to live real low and all those kind of things. It can certainly cause disruption. So it's a attack vector that you should be aware of. It's certainly something that you might see a question on in something like the CEH or maybe the Pentest Plus or that kind of a thing. It's out there. It's an attack. It's not novel, but there is going to be some better options. So what we're gonna do is set this up. Now this particular tool is made to work with NTLM Relay X, which is part of the Impacket, which I already have downloaded here. So I'm just going to get that one going first. All right, I believe that's the right folder for it. And it is, okay. Just go to a sudo conf. All right, we're going to do. Right. Now the syntax for this is actually really simple with set -6 because we're going to be dealing with IPv6, and then you just do your -T for your target. In this case, we're going to do LDAP secured, and then we're going to point it towards the domain controller because we're just going to be focusing on that particular domain. And then we're going to set up a fake W pad. It doesn't matter what you call it at all. We'll call it fake pad. Or that's something like that. That'll be fine. Okay, so that's going to be running. That's here. This is one component of it. The other side of it is we started with the actual tool for this man in the middle 6. And we'll start a new tab. We'll do sudo mail6 the domain, and that's all the information that you actually need to go for it. And you'll see this will do a little bit of stuff back and forth. It might take a little while for there to be any real output to this because we're targeting not the whole subnet. We're targeting this domain, and there's right now only two devices I turned on this particular domain. These are just really don't want to cause any issues. But we'll show you guys here. Let's see. While we'll wait for any of that information to come in, we'll post these in the chat. This is the GitHub page for this particular tool, and I've seen this tool referenced quite a few times in other training content. I think I've seen it mentioned from some of TCM's things. It's been a few books as well. Again, it's worth being aware of. One of the things that they do have on here, let me post this one real quick before we take a look at it, is this blog. They have a blog post from Fox IT that goes all the way through, not just this implementation of an IPv6 attack, but a couple of others as well. And it's really, really good. And it's actually quite brief for how long it could be. So this is one of the reasons I'm purposely not going super in depth into this particular attack vector. One, because I don't use it because it can definitely cause network disruptions. But also too, this documentation on it is very, very good. And this isn't a documentation on the tool, but on this particular type of attack, this documentation is awesome and is well worth a read if you're unfamiliar with IPv4, IPv6 based attacks. We'll see if anything's coming up through here. Doesn't look like we've got any traffic on there quite yet, but we'll move on for a little while. So something that you'll be probably much more familiar with, and we did a little bit with it last week, is the tool responder. So doing NetBIOS and element poisoning. So what we're going to be doing with that is spoofing NetBIOS requests that come in and trying to solicit the victim machines to connect to us rather than who they're intending to go to. Now, what we'll have to do is just set the interface I need to use, and there are a whole bunch of options. If we just do the help menu real quick, there's lots of different things that you can turn on and off. You can set specific things to include, to exclude. You can turn different features on and off. There's a lot of different ways you can use it. The documentation for Responder on GitHub is pretty good. A lot of different methodologies out there, and there's even a couple options that they have where they even give you the warning, like, watch out, this can break stuff on the network. So we don't use those. But in the general sense, And in this case, we don't even need to use any of those options. We're just going to use the interface with the defaults. Okay, so that's, I've got listeners running over here. Let's turn those off. Okay, so like I said before, this is a static lab right now, right? So I need to log into one of the other devices on a user so I can show you how that traffic would be made so that we can go through what this attack process would look like. So I'm going to switch over from here to this other window and we'll just log into this one of these users. Okay, let's make this bigger. Now, all I've really got to do here to make this traffic happen and make this poisonable, make this attack vector effective, and this is what makes it so dangerous and so easy to use, is that I really just have to misspell something I'm looking for, and it works super fast. So if I'm going to look for like a maybe I'm looking for like a finances share, right? Instead of the share that's being called finance, that should be about all it takes. Oh, I got the wrong slashes here. There, didn't even have to submit it. Just searching for it on there captured it a whole bunch of different times. And I can go into the logs for responder, and we'll be able to see that we've got the hash in there. So that's what we'll do right now. If we open up the folder, you can do this in the command line too if you want to, but it is going to be under user share responder. Logs. And we can see right here that we've got already right away the hash credential for that particular user. So it's an NTLM-v2 hash, and we have two options what we can do with this hash at this point, right? We can either try to crack it using Hashcat or something similar, or we can try to do a pass the hash attack. So in certain circumstances, if what's called SMB signing is not enabled and enforced on the victim host, the target, you can sometimes authenticate using hashes rather than having to actually crack them through. So one of the things I'll try to do, I'll always going to try to crack them because it's always a lot easier to make things work when you have the plain text credentials. Not to say your hands are tied doing pass the hash, they're not, but it's just better if you can get the plain text out of it. But one of the things I'll do before that is just check. It's an easy thing to do to check if SMB signing is going to be enabled or not. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off, and we can do that check just with Nmap. And let me just remind myself. I believe just remind myself of this device's IP address. 227. Okay. So if we just do nmap dash e 139.445, we're just looking for what SMB would be on. We don't need to do any kind of pings or anything like that. We don't need to add any obfuscation of this. You can if you want to. In this case, you could reduce the speed of it, but it's a fairly subtle one. I have found in the past that doing mass scanning of specifically SMB things does lead you a little bit more to being detected than other things. But in this case, that's really not what we're worried about right now. And there's a great set of scripts here. Christian, do you have something?
Yeah, so stupendous question for Abhijit here. So any tips to know in advance when to use pass the hash versus when to crack?
Yeah.
So keep it as lazy and easy as possible, guys, which is, so what Travis is trying to break down for you guys is identifying real quick here where you could do pass the hash attacks, where there's essentially SMB signing that's not enforced, where you can find there's systems that don't have SMB signing enforced. You want to do pass the hash attacks. It's going to be much faster, much easier, right? That's going to lead to gaining a foothold, within a matter of minutes. Rather, when you're cracking things, you have to work against. One, you have to have a expensive graphics card. So you're talking anywhere in a range of, $500 to $3,000 for, dedicated graphics cards for your rig. Or obviously you could look at spinning up some EC2 instances or Azure instances with powerful graphics Quadro cards in them. But seriously, it's going to cost money. And that takes time. You got to have the word list for it. You do obviously almost nobody does like brute force masking attacks like with Hashcat. Like you're not going to reasonably crack hashes that well. Because like that's going to get you up to like a permutation if you did everything like up to like 8 characters maybe, in a reasonable time frame. But usually what you do is you'd use a certain set of techniques to like do password profiling. One of our favorite tools, Travis. So I'm trying to remember. Mentalist is a fantastic tool that we leverage all the time for generating like customized password lists. And what we'll do is we'll use those passwords to try to crack or utilize them in conjunction with Hashcat to crack NTLM hashes, that kind of stuff. But certainly the way to go and gain a foothold into an environment first, try to do pass the hash. Most folks have gotten fairly well attuned to, though, or when I say folks, engineers in the blue team have gotten really well attuned to having SMB signing enforced now across the board. So it's becoming less and less frequent as an attack vector. And also newer versions of Windows Server have SMB signing now enforced, like the really, really new versions. So anyways, Travis, you're going to be looking for the opportunity to do pass the hash attacks. You're looking for SMB signing not being enforced with Nmap. Continue on.
That's what we're going to do right now. And one thing I'll say is if you do get onto a network, live network, and you pop up in Wireshark and you see NetBIOS and Elnar, and you think that may be a viable attack vector for you, start up Responder, then go check for your pass the hash attacks, right? Because Responder is going to take a bit. I've had it like one time ever where a hash came in the first minute. But I've had a lot of times where it's taken a few hours, right? A lot of times you'll need to kind of wait for key times during the day when a lot of people are coming in and logging on their computers and getting on all these file shares and all those different things. So like the first thing in the morning and then right after lunch is when you get a lot of that traffic coming in. If you're in the middle of the day and you turn it on, you might be surprised that it's a little bit quiet. It just sort of depends. So I'm gonna go ahead and go with this one. Should be pretty quick. This is just, wow. Why did it not give me anything? Maybe it's SMB. Interesting.
Did the IP change?
I just checked it. Like, ten 0 11 227.
Do it again. As in go and do an IP config again and just make sure. I don't know. Maybe DHCP reservation expired all of a sudden.
No,
It's there. Okay, good.
Let's see if we can just get a base one in here.
Is there any other ports open? Yeah, this is easy. This is interesting. We got a little Nancy Drew mystery going on here.
Out of curiosity, I'm pretty sure there was a lot more ports open on that when we had it the other day. Let me just pull that scan profile and right sudo. That doesn't feel right. Import this. This is the same Nmap scan we did during week 1. I'm just gonna pull it in and see what was open on that host then.
I promise I didn't change anything. I'm a jokester, but I wouldn't be that type of jokester in or anything like that.
Oh, I wonder if I didn't even have 227. I guess I didn't even have 227 turned on during that scan. Interesting. Well,
it's a default Windows server. I would have suspected that it would have
but that's the workstation.
Windows file share. Oh, okay, I see.
That one was the workstation. This one I just switched to. This is the domain controller, just for the sake of being able to see what this script does. It's going through, and you can see here it says message signing is enabled and required. So in this case, on this device, it's not going to be viable to do a pass the hash attack to maybe please yeah, that could have been it. What you can also do, and a lot of times what I will do, especially on the local host, is I'll just scan everything in there. I had a little bit of obfuscation to it, but once you're into the more, this is not overtly aggressive port scanning, but once you're not trying to be super subtle anymore, that's perfectly fine to start getting an idea of which ones are going to be an option or not. Now, more often than not, if we see it off in a couple places, we see it off turned by off, I mean not required. Sign not required. We see it prevalently that way throughout. Most people will do an Active Directory group policy object to require that across the board. So if you then see like one IP that comes up that doesn't have SMB signing, check into what that is. It's probably not a server. It's probably a printer, and it's probably not going to do anything for you because it's probably got default credentials anyway. But anywho, so if pass the hash, it does not seem like it's going to be particularly viable for us. That makes our next step of the process there is using Hashcat. Now, the way I tend to go about doing this is, well, I'll pull the hash, and there's a whole bunch of different ones in here. You only need one, but adding more of these in is not going to give you a higher chance of success. So all I do is copy that, and I'm just going to make myself a hashes file right here to feed into Hashcat. And paste it right in there. And now the reason I want to do that versus feeding it in individually in my Hashcat command, which I'll print out for you here in a minute. This VM does not have the capacity to really run Hashcat, but I'll show you the process for it. But the reason I feed it into a collected hashes file, and I also do an output file for it, is because throughout the engagement, you're going to have more and more hashes coming in each day. If you're using something like Responder and they are susceptible to NTLM poisoning and all that, I'm sorry, NetBIOS poisoning, and you don't want to do them one at a time by trying to feed in a 200 line command into Hashcat. But also, too, you're probably going to be running those hashes through multiple different word lists, custom word lists. You're going to keep trying multiple iterations of it. And it's just a lot easier to, just take the ones out that were successful out of this one, or just leave them in the output file, that sort of a thing. So what I'm going to do here is we'll go sudo again. Oops. All right, so Hashcat. -A, and this is just going to be a really simple dictionary attack, meaning I'm going to feed it in a big word list. It's going to compare the word list when it's in NTLM v2 form against the hash. If they match, then they match, right? I'm not going to try to brute force this thing. So -A in Hashcat is attack mode. Attack mode 0 is just a simple dictionary attack. And now M is important. Mode. For NTLM v2 is 5600. How do I know that? Well, done that one a lot, but there is a incredible resource from Black Hills Security, which is on my favorites bar all the time, which I'll share with you guys here. And let me zoom out a little bit. This is a one-page searchable, you can control F it and find what you're looking for. Breakdown, not just the attack modes that you need, but also all of the different correct hash modes for all these different types of things, from anything from SHA-256 to specific Cisco stuff. It's fantastic. So let me put that in the chat for you here.
Okay, so we got one additional note here. So sometimes Hashcat gives different passwords for different word lists, means wrong passwords. How to ensure it's the correct word list? Well, first and foremost, there's a couple of elements to Hashcat. So Hashcat, they do not provide like word lists by default. Kali Linux is populated with certain word lists like RockU and that kind of stuff. But I'll be honest, we rarely use those in our pen testing engagements. We have our own word lists in-house. And I think, I'll have to double check. I think we got a GitHub repository that we kind of have started that we refer to every now and then. I think the big one that we use the most is called Word List by Shees or something like that. Travis, is that right?
Oh, we've got a new one now. We got a new one that's like 3 times that size.
What's it called?
Um,
Here, I'll pull that up real quick while I elaborate. So one, there's tons and tons of word lists out there. The majority of the word lists are aggregated, obviously, through various password breaches that have been known of companies, over time, and that all gets aggregated together. They remove out all the usernames, they deduplicate all the redundant passwords, right? So those are all passwords that at one point or another a known human being has leveraged or utilized, right? Again, even the password list that we have, which can range anywhere from about 400 gigabytes all the way up to what I think about 3 terabytes, Travis, right? Even those will still only get you so far. But one of the things I will just note is that if you're trying to also crack a hash and you supply the incorrect hash type, that will also give you a challenging time. Okay, so weakpass.com here. Oh, yes. Yeah, we got the big weak pass ones. Yep, that we use.
this one works really well for us, and it's a doozy. Okay, what's that? Is that 23 billion entries? Yeah, we've had a lot of success with this DIC assassin. But
Super.
Rocky 2021 is good too. I mean, they're all pretty good. Any of the new ones are pretty good. Using things like the normal Rocky that's a default in Kali, that's so old now that you're missing out on everybody who's still using weak passwords, but they're using newer years like 2022.
Yeah.
So definitely, if you're doing these for bug bounties or pen testing or just for your own edification, this site's free. You don't need to. I mean, they say demo. You can just download these things. Just keep up with some of the newer ones. The weak pass, there's a whole bunch of different ones of these. They're all pretty good too.
The ones that I've had the best personal experience with outside of these here, folks, is like Travis and myself are also saying, Mentalist, right, is a fantastic tool to leverage. Take the moment to really do reconnaissance and think about who's your target, right? And the employees that can be lazy and produce passwords that are associated with that company. They love using phrases from the company. They love using the abbreviation of the company's name. So, you'll encounter a lot of that. You'll also encounter a lot of times people, they love years. And human beings, by the way, create very predictable password combinations. So you could go through and generate a mentalist, right? It comes pre-popular with a couple like different types of dictionaries and years and all that kind of stuff. You could select those attributes and it'll build the word list for you. But human beings love to put a word, a number, a piece of punctuation, right? You iterate through all of those, you're going to find a lot of interesting stuff, right? And make sure that you're just not just using like these regular password lists that we're talking about here. But again, when you do your own password profiling, it allows you to capture unique insights like them putting in the latest year. Like we just got into 2023. Everybody knows that when a user goes to change their password in 2023, they're going to update it to 2023. That's not right now on the Rocky 2021. That's not on any of these weak passes. So just keep that in mind there. So continue, Travis.
Yeah. Now, Hashcat can be a little bit finicky, where every once in a while the syntax will change just slightly and you'll get new and innovative, very ambiguous and generic errors that you have to troubleshoot through. Just as a rule of thumb here, if this should all be the same number, right? And it should be the same number of hashes that's in your file. If you have got 15 things that you believe are hashes in your file and it's showing you 3 on here, this thing is going to take forever and then it's going to fail. So just kill it and go back and figure it out a little bit. One other thing that is a common error, if you get something that says like incorrect hash type, but you double check and you're like pretty darn sure, check out your file of hashes and go all the way to the end and just make sure there isn't a space right here. When you copy and paste in, once in a while, you get a space, or if you do multiple lines, sometimes there'll be a space. So if you are getting a syntax error on the hash type, or it's just saying the hash type is wrong, double check that. That's gotten me a couple of times, and there's nothing harder than finding that one blank space somewhere. So, like I said, this VM cannot handle running through fast track. So we're gonna cheat that process a little, screwed by the white space every time. That's exactly right. So we're gonna see a little bit. I do know the password, obviously, for this one. So what we're gonna do is jump over into that particular workstation that we saw that it came from, the 227 one, and we'll talk a little bit about what we need you do first when you first get onto a compromised workstation, and what are some of the concerns. Then we'll see where we can go from there. Oh, from here, I'm gonna jump into this one here. Okay. All right, so we got on now. Usually we would do this with like maybe you'd RDP in, or you would use some other method to just send individual commands to it. And again, in this lab environment, and streaming is already making it struggle a little bit. I'm just going in directly to the virtual machine here. So we're just going to assume that this person is not trying to do his job or anything like that. So one of the things I'll do right off the bat first is I want to get an idea of who is this person. Obviously, we see the username, but what are the groups that they're in? Because sometimes you hit the jackpot and you find someone who's a local admin or higher. We've certainly gotten very, very privileged users, database administrators, that kind of thing, pretty early on into engagements, just through this type of attack vector. In this case, this looks like it's just a standard low-level user. So we're gonna have to look for a couple of different options here. So we have, in my mind, we really got two real options for progressing on farther, meaningful into network compromise. We can try to do some local privilege escalation on this box, try to elevate into a local administrator, and then go on from there. Or B, we can back up, use these credentials because we know it's an Active Directory account, and we can attack Active Directory. And we'll talk about just a little bit of some of the real basic stuff that you can do to look at privilege escalation first, and then we'll go into looking at some Active Directory techniques just a little bit after that. So one of the things that I like to do at first is you can do a couple just real simple commands right in the terminal to do a little bit of password hunting. It's one of those things that you see in every book and every training content. Oh, look for the passwords. I've never seen one, not one that was current enough. Certainly I found like Cisco passwords in an IT file share from like 2016, but nothing current. But there is a couple really easy ones that we can do to just see what's in there. So we can go directory search, and we'll search for pass. We'll search for red. Search for maybe config. Go that through. And it looks like there is actually a file on here called passwords.txt. It was not placed there. This is unfortunately, well, we'll take a look at it. Prepare to be disappointed on this one. Christian set this up initially. I thought I had captured a flag there when I did this the first time, and it was not a flag.
Oh man. Shit, there's gonna be all types of really interesting stuff on here, just based on the name and whatnot. Problem is I don't know how many glasses of whiskey I had when I was setting this up, so there might be some things I can't remember. But certainly we'll also continue to build out the rest of the lab with other unique environments with the most common type of vulnerabilities and weaknesses that we happen to see in corporate environments. So as we get into like part 3, part 4, so on and so forth, guys, we'll be able to build off of not just, this Active Directory environment, but just a lot of the other interesting things that we tend to kind of encounter as we're usually pen testing, like, insurance companies, internet service providers, working with hedge funds, that kind of stuff.
Yep, sure will. So this one, just a list of random passwords in there, nothing that's in any way going to be helpful for us. So, oh well, we'll just go back. One of the other things that you can do, if you're interested in it, is you can do firewall config. You don't need to be privileged to do that. It can be kind of interesting information. Makes a good screenshot for the report when you first get onto a workstation. But what we're going to do instead, you can see this Splunk right there. What we'll do is see if there's any possibility that we're going to be able to run any particular payloads or try to get any detailed information out of this particular machine that could be used for privilege escalation. So what I'm going to do is actually go to our own GitHub. And one of our repos, and I'll post the link for you here in just a second, is a Head Start privilege escalation repo right here. Oh, that did not copy. No, I can't copy out of this machine. I'm sure Christian can paste this one for you. No, I don't think this particular box has Git on it, so I'll just download it as a zip, and we'll see if Defender kills it immediately. Yeah, virus detected, didn't like that one. Okay, well, usually that's going to be these PowerShell commands. I don't like these without them being pretty well obfuscated, but Head Start we can usually get away with, and even by itself, you can get some good info out of this one.
Yeah, I think we got a version of the PowerShell scripts where we base64 encoded them, Travis, if I remember correctly. And we were actually able to get a couple different versions of these PowerShell scripts able to run being encoded with conventional EDR software like CrowdStrike installed. And it just was like, it took it. It was like, okay, yeah, this looks legit to me. So one of the things I would say is just kind of a small tidbit and tip for everyone else is that when you're trying to leverage various payloads and scripts on a particular system, encoding is your friend. Take the opportunity to encode and obfuscate as much as possible, and that's going to set you up for success. And one of the things that we tend to see is that, if it's not, I would say 70% of the time it's going to be PowerShell leading to the compromise of a system, right? If you got access to PowerShell, you're going to be able to do a lot of things. And still a lot of system admins are not very pragmatic about either pulling away completely PowerShell access for users or implementing conventional PowerShell hardening techniques, right? So users are provided a lot of flight path for malicious stuff to run. I would say that if you start to hit up against challenges with PowerShell, we tend to also employ a lot of PUA, potentially unwanted applications that are leveraged by internal IT departments to accomplish tasks. So, let's say you were trying to get a reverse shell on a box and it wasn't quite working, and you're trying to do it with PowerShell. Then, a lot of times we'll leverage things like PuTTY. So we'll download the the PuTTY toolkit to a system, right? And then what we could do is you could set up a reverse shell with PuTTY, bind that to command prompt or bind that to PowerShell after the fact to like maintain persistence, that type of stuff. Or, we love leveraging, TeamViewer, Screen Connect. Those are fantastic tools that malicious actors actually leverage and utilize themselves because it looks like the IT department. So just a couple of heads up, tips there for you guys.
Yeah, I believe that's actually one of our future sessions listed on Cyber Judo is actually talking about a lot of those things a little bit more in depth. So that'll be cool. So what we'll do is we'll run this here. This is going to tell us a couple of interesting things. Can standard users run batch scripts? That'd be nice. And we'll also see if we can run PowerShell right after that. Now it looks like it's going to let us run. So we go through this. Let's go to enumerate lots and lots of different information here. And we've got all kinds of build information. That's really nice. We've got different patches, hot fixes that are installed, the domain. We'll keep on going. Now, all of this stuff you can get the same information using different commands in the terminal. This script just kind of automates that process for you and gives you a nice output for it. We'll keep going through, just demonstrate this. See, it's going to trying to access all of these different things to get us even more information, like the SAM data. See if we were able to maybe dump the SAM database, but yeah, access denied to those things. Okay. Now, if you do get the chance to have all three of those scripts that are in that particular repo, that being Head Start, Sherlock, and Power Up together, Head Start gives you this nice little list of things to do, like literally just number one, copy and paste this, right? Put it in here. Copy and paste this, put it in here, import these modules, run it. Good luck. If you can get them successfully obfuscated, it can be really successful to do that. It can be a little bit challenging to do that. It's very hit or mouse with payloads getting through Windows Defender, or really any solution like that. You know, as soon as they become prevalent and out there, you would expect, and they do, the vendors are going to update their systems to mitigate those particular things and all that. So yeah, it can be a challenge, but yeah, with different types of encoding, you do have some options with it. And like I said, we'll do a little bit more in depth of this kind of a thing in the future, as well as doing more of the living off the land kind of thought process, going through looking at what we can do with PowerShell. Like in this case, you can see this actually opened up PowerShell for us. We ran PowerShell exe, so we know that users can do PowerShell as well. One thing that you would want to be aware of, though, is if you are trying to establish your foothold or do whatever you're doing before you get detected, trying to download a whole bunch of obvious malware and malicious stuff that gets blocked is a really good way to get found out right away and then kicked out of your device. And then they're going to do an investigation, and then your Kali box is going to get black holed. So you may want to be a little bit more prudent as to when you attempt to do this thing. So you might want to try to establish a foothold first, a backdoor first, with something like Screen Connect or TeamViewer, and then maybe go back to the Kali box and try to use those credentials while they're still active, while they might not know that this has been compromised quite yet, to do some additional stuff. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to jump back into Kali and see what other things that we can do right now. While I log back into that, any questions right now, Christian?
Yeah, we got one here. So do you end up piping this information to a text file once you ascertain interesting items?
You certainly can. Certainly can. More often than that, I'll usually screenshot the parts that are going to be easier, that I'm going to want to reference back to it. Because if I pipe it to a text file, it's still on their box in that case, and I've got to exfiltrate that. And that just adds a little bit more to do, another option to run into some issues.
You know, Honey Badger knows that I really love Notion, right? And so one of the funny things that Travis and we were talking about earlier is there is this tool set. It's called Offensive Notion. It's for command and control with Notion. I shit you not. Yes, that is right. Your note-taking application could be used as a command and control agent, and it'll collect all that information for your pen testing reports and stuff like that. And I really love how the person who created Offensive Notion notes in their little kind of breakdown FAQ section, but why? It started as a meme and then grew into a full project. Just roll with it. So anyways, it's a really, yeah, right here. This is awesome. By the way, Abhijit, these the GitHub IO post that you put here for living off the land on both Windows and Unix systems. Thank you so much for posting that. This is great content.
All right, awesome. While we're on GitHub here, one of the things what I'm going to use next is I'm going to use a few of the different tools that are in Impacket. And I have found that Impacket is always broken. At least when you get your fresh install Kali, it's always broken. And the easiest way I found to fix it that is still reliably working for me is this really neat tool called Pimp My Kali. It is free. It is great. You clone it down and run it. Number 5, fix Impacket. It's basically going to rip out the Impacket that's there. It's going to install one that works, get your dependencies right, and then you can get on with your day. It is a really neat tool to save yourself a lot of hassle troubleshooting things. So what I'm going to do is into Impact again. And we'll take a look first at what can this low privilege standard user do. When we've got their credentials, we can see if we can enumerate all of the Active Directory users on the domain controller, something like that. So we do Python 3 get AD user. Yeah, that's right. The tricky part with Impact is they capitalize random shit in all these different scripts, and you usually end up getting it wrong. But that one looks like it's right. We're gonna get all the users. And we're going to feed it the IP address of the DC, which is 10.11.137. And we feed it the domain of the user, which we just pulled off of you either get that from the enumeration that we've done on those Windows server on the Windows servers with Nmap and Legion that actually pulled some of that SMB and NetBIOS information, or from that initial look at the workstation. Username and password. And we'll see what we get. Okay. And we dumped out, we got an idea of all these different users that are there. Last log on, last password set. Okay, that's neat. That can give you some good good information. It doesn't give you an enormous amount of information, but it is a little bit of progress. Now, one of the most common things that you can do here anytime you're talking about Active Directory, Pentesting, one of the most prevalent attack vectors there is called Kerberosing. And you need a compromised Active Directory account, doesn't have to be an admin. And essentially what you're going to do is you're going to query the domain controller like we just did to get AD users. And you're going to do that to enumerate service principal names or SPNs. And then you're going to use your Kerberos TGT basically to obtain the TGS associated with those SPNs. Now, if you're not particularly familiar with Kerberos, we don't have a ton of time to dig into it right here. I do have some resources I can dig up, and we'll post along with these videos that can help break down how the Kerberos authentication process works. But it is something that is very, very important to network pen testing to be aware of and familiar with how that is going to work. Now, in this case, I don't have Kerberos authentication set up in this lab, but how we would go about doing it is with the get users SPN, user SPN S. Yeah, I think. This is the script that we'll do, and it's very, very similar in the syntax. The last one we just did there, you'd feed it in the domain, user, password, DC IP, the domain controller IP, and then hit request. And we can just do it right now, real quick. It's not going to feed us anything back, but you won't get an error. We shouldn't get an error. All right. Best. So it was able to identify some of these users on there, but it wasn't able to pull anything back because there isn't a cache for those because it's not set up. So, okay. Now, if you're how it will work if we have this set up, and we will show this in the future, is you essentially would be able to pull down the Kerberos hash of those particular passwords, and then you repeat the process we did in the beginning, where you go to Hashcat, try to crack it. You keep going in that process progressively more and more and more until you find somebody who's got a substantial amount of access. And in one of the cases here, we can see that this guy right here is an admin. So just in a theoretical case, let's say that this seems like an account that's made to do administrative stuff on the server. This seems like somebody's account who has one account that he's also doing domain admin stuff with, and he's also using day to day. That could be a really bad situation. Yeah, because that guy could get phished. There could be any kind of mess up that could lead to that account being compromised. And I'll show you real quick here what kind of damage you can do right away with an account with that kind of permission level, even without logging in directly to that DC. So if we do Python 3, and this is another really cool script that's in Impact, secrets dump. This we see. And I think we need to feed it NTLM because I think that's the authentication method that we're going to use here. I think there's another option too. I forget what the other option is. Domain / user and at and the IP of the DC and 0, 11, and 7. Okay, it's got a prompt for the password to make a connection. And we're able to dump all of the domain credentials in NTLM hashes for all of the users that are on that particular domain. So you can see that finding this is the key to the castle, right? That's the objective. Break into the domain controller as a domain administrator. You can do anything you want. You can create new users. You can change policies. You can turn off tons of different security features. You can do anything you like here. And the moral of the story here is really don't use your everyday normal working account for something that high privilege. We kind of make it separate, maybe have a separate admin account that you don't do that kind of stuff with. But if you do have people that are doing that, and we've had that case before, you may well pick up someone who is a local or even higher level administrator through that through poisoning with responder, going through that process, and even dumping these credentials. And I believe if we look at the options for secrets dump with the help menu here, authentication. You can even authenticate with the hash. So you can do a pass the hash attack with this particular script as well. You can do it with get users SPN as well, if of course that particular server does not have SMB signing enabled, which is probably fairly unlikely on that particular type of infrastructure, but certainly always worth checking. So to that, what are the questions from all those different things that we went over here? And while we go through that, I'll see if I can pull up that resource on Kerberos authentication.
Any big questions, concerns, thoughts? Sounds like we got not much on topic. Happy to take any questions off topic. No? Was Kramer my handiwork? Yes. So we work with a lot of companies that are like hedge funds and do private equity stuff and whatnot. And so the investment space is a very big one. And everybody knows Jim Kramer. So we wanted to have a spin off of his name. So we invented Jimmy Kramer for folks. And so just gonna say, if anyone connects with you on LinkedIn, it's a Jimmy Kramer. That person does not exist. That is us doing reconnaissance on you.
Probably me or Dane.
Yeah.
I hope you guys found this one and the last one helpful. And if there are any specific areas that you want us to specifically focus more on in the upcoming weeks, or if there's anything that was a little bit unclear here, or you'd like some more resources for it, feel free to either put it here in the chat, send us an email, shoot us out on LinkedIn, anything like that. We're happy to provide, not just, what we want to talk about every particular week, but what you guys are really interested in learning about and discussing. That's kind of the goal for these sessions each time.
Travis, for next week, you think so next week I'm not traveling. The week after I am. So for next Wednesday, you think I should do a little bit on leveraging ChatGPT for penetration testing engagements, whatnot? I think people will find that really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be a really cool one, very timely. I'm not sure, is Dennis on tonight? There's no Dennis on tonight. Maybe I can wrap it the week after to start us on some web app path too.
Okay, cool. I was about to say, so you know what's really quirky and interesting is that Notion started implementing ChatGPT, right? And now using Notion for command and control and ChatGPT. Oh, wow, wait. Talk about some really interesting things that could occur. So we'll play with that. We'll set up a LinkedIn event for that, folks. We'll disseminate that in the coming days. We'll obviously disseminate this video here via YouTube. As time goes on, make sure you guys go to the Cyber Judo site and you guys can continuously provide us feedback. There is a survey form there and all that kind of stuff. So please do not hesitate to add in more suggestions on content, what you guys want to see in the future. Yeah, we'll certainly be receptive to that. So with that, team, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Have a fantastic night now. Bye.
Yeah.